No, absolutely not. I mean, this is not the team of the 90s.
If Quincy doesn't get cut, I think that I'd probably end up on practice squad, if that was possible. Maybe they cut me and I'm playing for somebody else.
I couldn't make myself do it. I was just like, done.
We did not want to play. Cleveland didn't want to play. It was a lousy game. Should have never played it.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Jerry Jones for enshrinement into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Gene Jones.
74 years before he stepped onto that stage in Canton, Jerry Jones started his life 2,000 miles away in Los Angeles, California.
My mother and dad had moved with the rest of their siblings to California during World War II. My father wasn't in the service, but he worked in the aircraft plants out there.
After Jerry's 6th birthday, his father, Pat Jones, moved the small family to Arkansas, where shortly after the move, Pat started a small business of his own.
I grew up with my sister living above my dad's grocery store. And actually, I'm going to call it a supermarket for its time. But for instance, the activity was wonderful, and people were everywhere all the time.
The son of a salesman, Jerry learned early the value of a dollar and what it took to earn it.
I grew up with entrepreneurial parents, and the lessons that I learned around that kitchen table through osmosis are still with me today. I can remember memories of when I was around 9 or 10, my mama putting a bow tie on me, and I'd stand outside the door and greet the customers, and she'd wink if one of the ladies would give a tip, and had a history of that, so I'd push her basket around and help her get her things out of the shelves.
Jerry's love of sports began at an early age, and by the time he hit high school, football had become his passion. Earning all-state honors his senior year, Jerry proved he had what it took to play at the next level. And since he lived in Arkansas, there was really only one acceptable option.
Jerry arrived in 1961, a fullback from Rose City, Arkansas. Not that many people have ever heard of Rose City. He was a try-hard guy with a limited ability like me, and the guys that tried hard and stayed usually played, and that's one of Jerry's attributes right there. And I've always said that Jerry is probably in trivia, Arkansas Razorback trivia, he's the only guy that started at fullback one year and the next year started at guard in the offensive line.
Changes were also happening off the field, and none more meaningful than a budding relationship with Jean Chambers, a former Miss Arkansas and future Mrs. Jones. Along with Jean, Jerry met several young men that would play a big role in his future endeavors. One of these players was a defensive lineman from Port Arthur, Texas, named Jimmy Johnson.
He was on offense, I was on defense, and you know, our names ended in J, and so they roomed us together on all the away trips. So we were roommates, and we knew each other, you know, through thick and thin, you know, all the way back at Arkansas. He was always, you know, finagling doing this. He always had a lot of irons in the fire, which he does now.
One of those irons was the resale of coveted Razorback football tickets, a pre-game ritual that involved a lot of ingenuity and a little extra legwork.
I would get those from usually the freshman girls' dormitory, and they could buy a ticket for $1. The face on them was $7, but we were so good as a team, those tickets went for $20. And so, but the problem is that you had to be a student to get in. Well, before the game, I would get all taped, ready to go. And if I'd sold about 20 of them, whether it was in Fayetteville or Little Rock, Arkansas, I'd have to go out to the players' gate and lead all the people through the gate that I'd gotten in. They had a seat because of the ticket. I'd walk them across the end zone and lead them up in the stands. Then I'd come back in and get my equipment on, get ready to play.
And on weekends, instead of Jerry hanging around at the clubs like all the other players were, Jerry is selling insurance on weekends, 19, 20 years old, and the guy's making money already. He was different. He was wired a little bit differently.
You knew, all the way back at Arkansas, this guy's going to be super successful at whatever he does.
In 1964, both Jerry and Jimmy made the All-Southwest Conference team, and the Arkansas Razorbacks made history.
Cotton Bowl victors for the first time, the Razorbacks have finished the year undefeated in 11 games. This great Arkansas team was officially named National Collegiate Football Champions. That was 1964, a year to remember.
Football stayed with me. I talked about it all the time. I daydreamed about it. I thought about it every day. I aspired to be in the NFL.
After his graduation from the University of Arkansas, Jerry tried his hand at a variety of business ventures. The most notable of these was the potential purchase of the struggling San Diego Chargers, where Jones came very close to making a deal he couldn't refuse.
I had no money, but I did have an organization that was willing to lend me the money. As a matter of fact, they sent to Baron Hilton, who owned the team at the time, they sent him a $1 million letter of credit so that I could show that I had made arrangements to buy the team if we decided to buy the team.
That organization was the Teamsters Union, a powerful association with links to organized crime, and headed by none other than Union President Jimmy Hoffa.
I was talking to my father and he said, "Son, by your own admission, this doesn't work economically. There's no money coming in and a lot going out." And I said, "But Dad, this is my lifelong ambition." And he said, "You hadn't been around long enough to have a lifelong ambition." He said, "I'm trying to talk to you realistically, Jerry. If it doesn't work, I hate to see you as a young man just right off the bat get in something that financially doesn't work." And so he talked me out of it.
Jerry's desire to succeed was bruised, but not broken. And with the added responsibility of a growing family, he continued his quest for the next business deal.
He was in the insurance business, oil and gas business. He was always making money. And I remember Stephen, his son, was in my football camp at Oklahoma State. And Jerry was there in Oklahoma City. He came by the house and I said, "Jerry," I said, "you've made so much money, you're doing so many different things. I want to get involved in some of that stuff." I said, "I want to make some money." He said, "Jimmy," he said, "you go to bed at night, you're thinking about football. You wake up in the morning, you're thinking about football. I go to bed at night, I'm thinking about making money. I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about making money." He said, "You stick to what you know and I'll stick to what I know." In 1988, I was on a fishing trip with my son in Mexico, and for some reason, the next morning I got up, I was feeling pretty rough. I don't know why, but I was drinking a lot of coffee, and I was reading the paper when I learned that the Dallas Cowboys were for sale. I found a phone in the lobby, and I got someone on the other end of the connection, and I said, "You don't know me from Adam. My name is Jerry Jones. And if I live to make it back to the United States, I'm gonna buy the Dallas Cowboys. Hangover be damned."
Year after I left Oklahoma in '88, I get a phone call one night, and it's Gil Brandt calling me. Gil calls me. He says, "Do you know Jerry Jones?" I said, "Yeah, I know Jerry Jones. Know him well. I socialized with him in the '70s when he was here in Oklahoma City. We were together a lot, and he was doing well in the oil and gas business." He said, "Well, let me tell you, he just bought the Cowboys." Then I remember telling Gil, I said, "I'm going to tell you something. He's going to cut all the fat out around there because I'm pregnant. I know how Tex Schramm ran. When you have an owner that gives the general manager the checkbook, And when he can go write a check anytime he wants for any player or free agent or any contract, well, he can solve any problem but just give them a little more or what they asked for. Well, they weren't going to ask for Jerry to get what they wanted, and no one around there was.
The Cowboys were losing $1 million a month cash. When you buy something, you have to assume that who sold it to you really knew everything about it and had maximized their opportunity. So you got to change something.
Jerry buys the team. His first act is to somebody find me Coach Landry.
Jerry flies down to Tom's lake home or his vacation home right outside of Austin.
Coach Landry was playing golf the time that Jerry came in, and he fired Coach Landry in my best friend's office. What the freak? I mean, who could have expected that?
Well, I think they were appalled by what was going on. I mean, here was Tom Landry, had that tremendous history with the Cowboys, had built the Cowboys. He was Mr. Cowboy in terms of building this franchise. And when Jerry comes in and fires the man who has been the only head coach the Cowboys ever had, they were totally appalled by who is this guy from Arkansas to come in and say, Tom, you're out. I'm bringing my own guy in.
Oh, you know, I came in '92 and it was still the talk around town. And there's some older players that still hold that grudge against Jerry.
This was a corporate takeover, but the difference was this was a sports team that had become the fabric of the community and had emotional ties that go much beyond any sort of business transaction.
But to many Cowboys players and fans, if there was one thing more important than loyalty, it was winning.
I was doing one of 2 sports call-in shows in the 80s, and I was taking calls every single night about how Tom Landry has to go. Tom Landry has had the game has passed him by. It's time for something else. He's been great, we love him, move on. The same people who were calling and screaming, you've got to get rid of Landry, then someone replaced Landry, and he's the bad guy.
You know, if I tell you, I give you 1 year for you to tell me how I can let Landry go, that the public will accept, you can't do it. Coach Landry have to retire. A Bear Bryant at Alabama have to retire. There's no right way to let a legend go.
With only 3 wins the previous year, Jerry was confident that the addition of Troy and Jimmy Johnson would make an immediate impact in his first season as owner. But the Cowboys soon found out that the climb to the top would be a little tougher than they imagined.
You know, Jimmy came in, I said, that's it, we're good. We got Jimmy, I got my quarterback, Troy. This is it, I know it's going to work now, and we only won 1 game. So I think after that first year, we all kind of stepped back and assessed and said, wow, this is going to require much more than we all thought and believed.
But even with 15 losses, the Cowboys knew that better days were on the horizon. And in 1990, with a brand new game changer at running back, things were moving in the right direction.
In 1992, our team was getting good. We played a preseason game in Tokyo. We played the Houston Oilers, and they had Warren Moon, who's sitting on this stage tonight. They were better than us right at that particular time. Warren had them up by 14 points at halftime, and I was over on the sideline, and I looked at this ceremony being prepared. And I saw this huge trophy, a samurai warrior. It was as tall as me. And then I saw a little old 12-inch geisha doll. And I asked him, I said, tell me, what's this going on? He said, well, the winner of this Tokyo Bowl, preseason now, gets this big samurai warrior, most beautiful trophy I've ever seen. The loser gets that little doll. I hot-footed it over to Jimmy and I said, Jimmy, have you seen what's going on over on the other sideline? You know, we haven't won crap. I would like to win that trophy. He said, Jerry, he said, you know, we've had Aikman out since the first 8 plays. Really, it's not in our best interest. And, you know, this preseason game, we're trying to get ready for something in the season. Well, of course, Houston won. Bud Adams got that great samurai trophy. And I took home that little geisha doll.
Just 3 years after Jerry Jones purchased the team, the Cowboys were starting to shape up. Since the 1-15 season of 1989, Dallas had improved their record every year. And in 1992, as the youngest squad in the NFL, were ready to inch even closer to being a Super Bowl caliber team.
We were just young, having a lot of fun, again, very passionate, a lot of great athletes on the field, and we didn't really care. We just wanted to play and play really hard.
As I look back to the start of the 92 season, I think what makes that year so special is the fact that I still don't think, as a group, we knew how good this team was capable of being.
The Cowboys cruised through the regular season with an incredible 13-3 record, routed the Philadelphia Eagles in the divisional playoff, and advanced to the NFC Championship game against the mighty San Francisco 49ers.
I remember San Francisco, I don't know what they were that year, 15-1 or 14-2 or whatever, and then, you know, this 49er dynasty and all that. Sometimes, you know, youthful ignorance can be bliss. You know, we're just playing a game. We don't know the ramifications. I don't really believe anybody thought about the Super Bowl until maybe 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
I think the 49ers were the best team in the NFL that year. But that particular day, we were the best team.
2 weeks later, the Cowboys stormed into Pasadena for Super Bowl 27. And after 60 minutes of Dallas-dominated football, Jerry Jones and his Cowboys stood on top of the world as Super Bowl champions.
You will experience nothing like what we experienced winning that first Super Bowl. I love my kids. Winning that first Super Bowl was the greatest feeling I ever had, period. Period.
We're standing in the Rose Bowl. Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner of the NFL, hands us the Lombardi trophy. And when he handed us the trophy, that Jimmy reached over and said, Jerry, would you rather have that damn samurai warrior back in Tokyo or have his Lombardi trophy?
By 1993, Jerry Jones had turned the Cowboys into a profit-generating machine. And with one Super Bowl championship already in the books, the prognosis for a repeat performance looked very realistic. After a slow start, Dallas won 12 of its last 14 regular season games and breezed through the playoffs all the way to Super Bowl 28, where, in similar fashion to the previous year, the Cowboys dismantled the hapless Buffalo Bills to capture their second consecutive world championship.
We have mutually decided that I would no longer be the head football coach with the Dallas Cowboys.
I hated it for both of them. And that's why I said, why couldn't you guys made this work? You win 2 Super Bowls in a row, you're on top of the world. There's enough for everybody to get credit in this thing.
I was certainly disappointed. You know, Surprise would say that I didn't understand that I had 2 strong-minded individuals who were 2 geniuses at what they do.
When you put whatever Jimmy's baggage was together with whatever Jerry's ego and baggage was, and you put those 2 things together, then you get what you got. That's why.
I think all of that led to his dismissal eventually and why they couldn't get along. They just couldn't get along, which is a real shame.
Jimmy had a huge ego back then, and I get it. Listen, you know, he's running the organization. Jerry brought him in here to run this organization the right way. He had just won 2 back-to-back Super Bowls, so you can imagine the confidence that Jimmy had. But you can also see on Jerry's side, Jerry's the one buying the groceries. Jerry's the one who's extending himself financially to sign certain guys and, you know, keep guys on his roster. So I get it. In the end, it's Jerry's baby. Jimmy was a hired hand, and then the egos got involved, and Jerry had to make a decision, and we had to live with the fallout.
The unusual timing of Jimmy Johnson's exit left most of America shaking their heads in disbelief. But as the dust of his departure settled, a recurring theme in Jimmy's resume led to the realization that the timing may not have been the question, but the answer.
No one can deny Jimmy's role in putting the team together, the staff, the players. You also cannot deny that at that point in his life, Jimmy Johnson never held a job anywhere longer than 5 years, nor did he after that.
That was kind of my background. I was at Oklahoma State University as a head coach 5 years. I was at the University of Miami 5 years. I was at Dallas Cowboys 5 years. A lot of people say, well, you should have stayed at the University of Miami. You'd have won 4 or 5 national championships. Well, you should have stayed at the Dallas Cowboys, won 4 or 5 Super Bowls. I always like to go and accomplish things, and I'm a little bit of a gypsy. I kind of get bored and I want to do other things, and so I really kind of had the feeling, you know, that I was going to be leaving Dallas.
You know, he made that clear to me. He said, Stephen, this just isn't about, you know, right now struggling with our relationship between your father and myself. This is more just about, I've kind of made my run with the players. You know, the way I coach, the way I do things, it's kind of my time to move on.
Barry Switzer walked into a hornet's nest, and he never flinched. Barry, great job.
March the 28th, Jerry called. I just had a colonoscopy. People have asked me, were there any correlations between the colonoscopy and Jerry Jones? I said, no, it just happened to be. I'll never forget, I'd had a colonoscopy that morning. My girlfriend had picked me up. I was single and brought me back to my townhouse, and I was drugged up pretty good. And Jerry called, and she says, Jerry wants to talk to you. I said, I can't take the number. I'll call him this afternoon. I called him back in the afternoon, and he asked, the only thing he says, you want to coach the Cowboys? Hell, I said, hell, I don't know. The job was open. He says, it's fixing to be. And he said, I said, well, call me when it is. And he called back and said that they've settled, he and Jimmy have settled, and come on down. The next day I drove on down, and the next day I was announced head coach. So that was my interview process. Jerry told me that he only had 2 names on his list when he bought the Cowboys, Jimmy and me. That was the only 2 coaches he considered. He knew them, he could trust them, he thought, knew he could trust me. My first day in the office, Barbara Goodman was a great lady, was secretary. She's the one who write books. She was secretary for Landry, she was secretary for Jimmy Johnson, and she's secretary for me. Great lady. And she's helping me get organized in my office. It's the first time I've sitting, Jimmy just left, packed up and gone. I'm trying to get organized what little stuff I've got. and just signed the contract the night before with Stephen and Jerry and my attorney, and all of a sudden Jerry walks in, and Barbara just gets up and leaves, knowing that Jerry wants to talk to me in private. Jerry closes the door, comes down and sits in the desk, and I go over and sit down for the first time in Jimmy's chair, or Dallas Cowboys chair, or Landry's chair. I don't know whose chair it was. So I sat down there, and I looked at Jerry, and Jerry says, "That contract we did last night, I want you to tear it up." I said, "Why would I do that, Jerry?" He says, "Because I'm going to give you a better one." And I said, "Okay." And you serious? And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I'll call you, get me the contract, I'll get my attorney, and we'll sign it." And he got up and started to walk out the door, and I'm thinking, what made him do this? And I said, "Jerry, I want to ask you a question. Why are you going to do this?" And I'll never forget, he stopped at the door and he turned around, just the two of us in the room. He said, "You know what? I got up this morning and I looked in the mirror and I liked myself for the first time in a long time." And I knew what he meant, because a lot of men have been in that situation before in their lives. When they suck up their guts and they do something they knew they should have done, and they do it. When everybody says that, they won't do it. And I understood what he meant by that. I said, "You know what, Jerry, you want to have another night to sleep on it?" I said, "No, this is all you can get." So we signed a new contract, and I appreciated that. But that's a true story. And he says, "Best I've ever felt about myself in a long time." And I looked at myself this morning.
That season, Jerry, Barry, and the Cowboys came within one game of the Super Bowl, losing to the 49ers in the NFC Championship game.
Prior to 1995, no team had ever won 3 Super Bowls in a 4-year period. The challenge to win that 3rd Super Bowl was made more difficult because free agency had just come to the NFL.
After losing 10 key players to free agency, many thought that the window for another Cowboys Super Bowl had closed. But Jerry made some valuable additions to the team that took the Cowboys all the way to Super Bowl 30.
You know, prior to that, it was I could win without Jimmy and you know, bring in Barry Switzer. He can do the coaching, and the pressure was on Barry. 95, the pressure was on us, and I thought that brought us together with Barry closer to it as a team to go out and win that next Super Bowl, because now it wasn't that Barry couldn't coach them to a Super Bowl. It was the players couldn't win another Super Bowl without Coach Johnson.
I'm happy for Jerry. I'm happy for Jerry when we won it the next year. It took the pressure off Jerry. It really did.
Just 2 years removed from the historic win in Super Bowl 30, the Cowboys found themselves dealing with the prospect of their first losing season in 7 years.
I remember one night we called it the Last Supper. Lacewell and I called it the Last Supper. We were in Cincinnati, and Jerry's talking about what we're going to do next year. And you know how excited Jerry gets and enthusiastic he is. And I love him. And he and Stephen are sitting over talking about, we can do this, we can do this. And I looked at him, I tell you, the first thing you have to do is you have to fire my ass and hire a new coach if we don't win the Summits tomorrow. And they ought to seen the looks on their face. Lacewell looked at me, and I meant it too. And I didn't. We lost the next day, and we go 6-10 that year. And I left and went back to Oklahoma.
In 1998, Barry Switzer was replaced by Chan Gailey, and the Cowboys' less than stellar performance on the field resulted in a level of mediocrity that was hard to swallow for many Cowboys fans.
As Roger Staubach likes to say, based on his experiences in the 70s and 80s, we love you, win or tie. As long as you're going to win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, then we will stop saying bad things about your future great-grandchildren in public. We won't curse you in church anymore. But as soon as that stops,
By the year 2000, the glory of Super Bowls past was no more than a memory, and yesterday's legends seemed unable to rekindle that flame.
For any franchise, the transition period after you win a title, in my mind, is always the most difficult, because you keep all of the people in place you had the success with, and you probably stay with them 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 years longer because of the loyalty you built up, the appreciation you built up, and just, you know what, on some level you've earned this. We want you to end your career as a Cowboy, so let's ride this out together.
For the longest time, we wallowed around in mediocrity as far as bringing in personnel, good personnel. But Jerry was still the most optimistic person that I could ever be around. I mean, I can still remember us having Jerry. I can remember looking at the personnel one year. I'll tell you this. We were in this big meeting room, and I'm thinking, this is going to be another 5-11 season. This is going to be terrible. And Jerry comes in the meeting, and as optimistic as he is, he gives us this speech. And I'm looking at this personnel, and he's telling us how good we're going to be. And I honestly left that meeting thinking, you know what? We're a playoff team.
With an aging team and free agency fatalities, the Cowboys were in decline. Now 5 years since the last Super Bowl win and restless for the next, Dallas media and fans started to point fingers, many of them in the direction of Jerry Jones.
Fans wanted their sports owners to stay in the background, pay the bill, and let the coach, general manager run the team.
The fact that Jones was wearing 2 hats as both owner and general manager had been a sore point for skeptics since Jerry took office.
I will tell you right now, if you have worked as hard as I have to get where I've got, and somebody says you're meddling in what you've done, that will make you a little defensive and turn you into something you don't like yourself. And I'm tired of defending that. The facts are that's not been the way it's been out here since 1989. It's not going to be the way it is going forward. It has helped us win since 1989, and it's going to help us win again. Just keep on going. You motivate me.
I think people forget, they look at Jerry, the businessman, but I think they forget that he, at his core, is a football guy. He grew up playing football, and he's a guy who loves the game and understands the game and understands the role it has in communities.
Jerry is a great businessman. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. But he's also won Super Bowls. Business doesn't win Super Bowls. That's football wins Super Bowls. You know, if business wins Super Bowls, Bill Gates and all those dudes will have Super Bowls. They don't have them.
I think you've had an exaggerated sense of just how hands-on Jerry is as far as dictating to the people who work for him, this is how you'll do it.
Jerry never told me to run a play, never told me who to play. He never called a defense or an offense. I always laughed about people saying, Jerry comes to the sidelines. Well, it's his sideline. He bought the damn team. Who gives a damn? I don't have time to look at Jerry. I don't even see the cheerleaders. You know what I mean? You got all these beautiful cheerleaders down there. Someone says something about, I'm in the ball game. We got 60 minutes to play. I'm watching 11 players on the field, offense or defense. I don't give a damn. Who am I supposed to know who's on the sidelines or not?
Michael Irvin taught me the art of smiling in the face of adversity. The rougher it was, the louder he laughed. He was a football player. I did things sometimes against the grain, and sometimes it rubbed people the wrong way.
Even through the Cowboys' competitively lean years, Jerry continued to push for changes that would advance his team and the game.
There are some business things that I think he spearheaded on the league level that really just changed the game, whether it was being involved in TV contracts or how teams were marketed, how the league was marketed. I just think he changed the game. And I've heard somebody say this before, he's kind of added another 0 to everybody who's involved in the National Football League. And I think that's probably pretty accurate.
everything he did was with an eye toward the league, the marketing, what he did with Pepsi, what he did with Nike. Again, people viewed it as contentious. They're playing a game in New York. He invites Phil Knight. The lawsuit's filed, and Phil Knight suddenly pops up in his box and goes down on the field before the game in a game in New York.
Phil Knight, who is the CEO of Nike, this is a major, major story. It will send shockwaves throughout the National Football League.
Jerry came in and created a new paradigm for the NFL and how it makes money.
I think the concept of marketing really wasn't a one that was given a lot of heft in the National Football League. And then Jerry Jones bought the Dallas Cowboys, and marketing he did.
That was the driving force behind our interest in doing those kinds of things with great companies like Pepsi and great companies like Miller Beer and AT&T. That's where that came from, and of course I had hoped that if we could do it well, the league could do it well. When I was 21 years old, my coach, Frank Brawls, took the Arkansas Razorbacks to Houston to prepare to play here in Dallas in the Cotton Bowl on New Year's Day. And while we were down there to get away from the hoopla and all the camaraderie that goes on around a bowl game, he took us on a field trip to the Astrodome. And there hadn't been any event in it or any game played, but it was finished. We walked in there, and I'm gonna get emotional, but I looked up, and you just couldn't believe it. And it felt like you were on Mars. And I thought, who and where, how does a man or men or women think of this, and where do you start? And I remembered that all my life. And when I'd see something about the Astrodome, I'd read about it. Consequently, 35 years later, when I had a chance to be a part of building the venue of AT&T Stadium, I didn't have to think, could I do it? I didn't have to think really a lot about how to do it. I knew it could be done. And it just shows me, when you put in somebody's mind and heart when they're young, how it really lasts all the way up, in my case, almost 30 years later. And they not only do it what they saw then and had put in them then, they a lot of times do it so much bigger.
10 days before Jerry Jones sat down for this interview, his coach and friend, Frank Broyles, passed away at the age of 92.
I'm not a pop psychologist, but there's no question relationships are important. And the most important relationships in his life are his family, his wife Jean and his kids, his grandchildren, and he makes no bones about that. And it's a great example for the rest of us.
He's at a football game on Thursday night, a high school football game on Friday night, a college football game on Saturday, and an NFL game on the weekend, where he just loves the game and he loves his family. And I think the passion of those two are really what drives him.
When we first moved to Dallas, I was living with my parents in a one-bedroom condo, and I had just had my daughter, Haley, and my mom had set up the little study with a bed and a crib. It didn't have a door, didn't have anything on it. It was practically, right in the living room. And, every night when I put her to bed, of course, she'd wake up in the middle of the night and need to be fed and cry and all that. And my dad would wake up in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. She ate every hour. And every hour he'd come in and he'd sit on the corner of my bed and he'd say, "Is there anything I can do to help you?" And it's like, "No, you can't help with this." And he said, "Well, then I'm just gonna sit here and keep you company." And that compassion is something that, is the most valuable thing that he has that I enjoy.
What I would want to carry on with my family is prioritizing family.
Mom and Dad were involved in our lives and the things that we did, and they made everything. They made everything you did seem important. And I think that's so instrumental in a family, and it's so instrumental in what you do with your life, being raised, just to believe you can go do something.
In 2017, the world was given a bronze reminder of one man's lifelong passion for the game he loves. A single symbol that reflects the countless souls that invested in the journey of a solitary man with a dream as big as Texas.
I think it's short-sighted to think that his legacy is a building or bricks or mortar or a stadium or a field. It's about inspiration. It's about aspiration. It's about loving a game. It's about having faith in youth and young kids to take you to a place that you can't reach on your own. And it's about living in a world that you make your dream your reality.
You know, it's real easy to say it's about winning Super Bowls or it's about having a successful franchise on and off the field. But I've heard him say so many times that really what he's done since 1989 and done over the last 25 plus years is it's been his time to carry the ball.
When he first bought the team, I think he said it so well, I don't really feel like you ever own the Dallas Cowboys. You just get your chance to really run with the ball and manage the team. And the fans at the end of the day are the lifeblood of a franchise.
Folks, obviously to have had the chance to be a part of this great game, use whatever skills that might work to help move the ball forward, I leave you tonight with one last thank you. It's for you, the fans. I'm a fan. You're the heartbeat of the game. And the Dallas Cowboy fans are the greatest fans on earth. You're here tonight because you love the game. Guys, I'm here because I love it too. Thank you, guys.